I'm gone tomorrow.
We're here. We're good.
Okay, we'll send it to Anna to print off.
Nice.
She can have the minutes like
Yeah, it's we feel like you moved
I just haven't had a chance to look yet.
Okay. That's okay.
It's not a mega rush.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
I just haven't been able to catch up.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay. Just needs to.
Hi.
Anna, what about her?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, okay.
Make sure you're in the right chair.
Yeah, make sure I'm in the right line.
Okay.
You have to stay after for a picture.
I do.
In our annual.
Would have dressed up.
We're gonna.
Still got 2 minutes. We can't start early around here. I think we're good. Good evening, everybody. For the record, it is 5:15 p.m. on Thursday, January 24th, 2019. Time for the regular meeting of the Wenatchee City Council. I've called the meeting to order. The first item tonight would be the pledge to our flag. Councilmember Poyer, would you lead us?
Yes, please
Are you
stand.
lonely over there by yourself?
Yes, please stand and face the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Poyer. And just for our friends in the audience tonight, we have two members of the council that are here by phone. So Councilmember Kulas and Councilmember Esparza are on phone, and we've got them connected here, and they're listening through the little device. That gets us a quorum. We need 4 to have a quorum, and so we have 5, so we have the ability to conduct business tonight. So the first item is our consent items, which includes this evening's agenda, the vouchers, and the minutes of the previous meetings, a resolution regarding voting representatives. I would entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I would make a motion that to approve the agenda for this evening, the vouchers and minutes from the previous meetings, and to adopt resolution number 2019-02, designating voting representatives on behalf of the city to various community boards, councils, and organizations.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bailey, a second by Councilmember Markert to approve this evening's consent items, including the agenda, the vouchers, and the minutes, and resolution 2019-02, appointing voting representatives on behalf of the city. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We got 2 yes votes from Council members Kulas and Esparza. So the next item on our agenda tonight is citizen comment. This would be when any member of the audience would like to address the council on something that's either not on tonight's agenda, or if there's something specifically, I'd like to sort of know what it is so we can kind of work our way through it. I do see a lot of our friends and neighbors from the Skyline Drive. I've heard some rumors about Black Rock and some wanting to make some public comment. There's nothing on our agenda tonight about that. But if you would like to speak to that to some point, raise your hand, come up, give us your name and address. We'd give you about 3 minutes or so. Tammy is the gatekeeper of the clock. So anybody wish to come up and address that? I see a hand, a couple hands. Come on up. Can't be afraid.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting citizens.
Name and address for the record.
John Marshall, 3620 Westridge Place, Wenatchee. I'm here to talk about Black Rock. The way I look at it, the only people that really benefits are the tramps. It's really not in the interest of the community. And from four perspectives, wildlife is mule deer winter range. Not only is it taking out acreage, but the way it sticks out like a thumb into a wild area gets in the way of wildlife travel. So it's a loss for mule deer. That's why WDFW has opposed it. Number two, traffic. The people who live on Skyline are saying that that road is already overused, oversubscribed. Number three, aesthetics. A lot of people have worked really hard for many years, have been very generous in making the foothills a nice place for everyone and for future generations. And this is going to be like a big thumbprint on a really pretty picture. Number four, fire. We are vulnerable to wildfire in Wenatchee, very vulnerable. Most of the houses on Skyline are on the city side of the road. The pavement is somewhat of a fire line, although embers can blow across. What I see with Black Rock, when you think of how a town should be laid out in order to protect itself from fire, it should have a nice, even boundary. And this is a peninsula. If it comes to be, it'll be a peninsula of housing sticking out into a very flammable wildland. That land grows sagebrush. Sagebrush is an explosive fuel with a lot of volatile oils. There could be some things done that would make the homes less flammable, but unless somebody wants to enact a very strict ordinance and to police it, which I think the new residents wouldn't want, there's no guarantee those houses aren't going to burn down. And when they do burn, they're going to throw embers across the street. And I've driven Skyline Boulevard. I can say that that whole neighborhood is very vulnerable. You don't want a bunch of houses going off.
Thanks, John. And I think I think I might be a chance for at least myself to sort of explain the process of how land development goes sort of within the city. What's interesting is the city council has no role in approving the Black Rock subdivision, to be quite honest with you. The process is this city council sets the land use. I don't even know what it is, low density residential, right? So we set land uses, commercial in certain areas, high density residential, low density residential. We do that every so often. I think we probably did that 10 years ago. The other thing that this council does is they set our development code. How wide is the road supposed to be, where do sidewalks go, where does sewer go, all of those sorts of things. And then it's up to the legal process to determine whether or not any particular development, Black Rock, Pine Shadow, Beaconsfield, I'll give you the list of them, whether they fit our code or not. Is it low density residential? Is the applicant fitting with that? And is his development code fitting with our standards? Those decisions aren't made by this body. Those decisions are made by, in this instance, a hearing examiner, which is what most cities and counties use these days. We have an attorney who comes in and reviews the record, reviews our code, and makes a determination as to whether or not this development fits that code. This council doesn't get to see that. The only thing that this council does, or this mayor in this instance now, because we've changed our code, is eventually there's a blueprint drawing called a Mylar that gets sent into the county and gets recorded. here's all the lots, here's the roadway, here's all of the stuff. That's sort of the Mylar, the plat. The mayor approves the final plat, doesn't have the ability to not sign it. It just doesn't meet the code, doesn't have the list of conditions, and have they completed it all. So I know there's lots of people that think the council has a role in this, or that the mayor can somehow stop this, and really this is all a process that goes through the hearing examiner. Once it gets appealed to court, and this body doesn't have the right to even communicate. I've got some emails from some of my friends. I can't even respond to them because this is going through sort of a legal process. The hearing examiner made a decision. There's some folks that don't like the decision. Ultimately, it sounds like the Superior Court will make a decision. If you don't like that decision, it goes to the appeals court. If that doesn't like it, the Washington State Supreme Court might hear it. Who knows how long this goes? And ultimately, we're involved in that just because it's in our land use code that's being questioned. And so it's really not appropriate for this group to comment or to say, John, what a bunch of great ideas, or those sorts of things, because that record's already been developed. So what I would say to the folks in the audience tonight, if you want to come up and talk to us, please do. You're not going to get responses from us other than we're just going to sort of listen, because we have to wait for this process to work its way through. As much as we like it or don't like it, property owners have rights based on our zoning code and based on our development code. I have rights at my house to maybe put in a mother-in-law apartment. And so I just think we have to let this sort of run its course. So I know some of you have emailed me, and I will apologize to you right now that I haven't emailed you back, because I've been told by our legal staff not to do that we have to let this process sort of go through. And if you question anything, you could question 15 years ago when we put the hearing examiner as the role, because back when I was on council, longer ago than that, and we had these subdivisions, and people would come to me and say, Mayor or council member at the time, I want to talk to you about this subdivision. I can't talk to you about it because if the hearing examiner is the judge, then we're the jury, right? And could you imagine going through a jury and go through a divorce and get to go talk to the jurors about what you think the right answer is? This is a complicated sort of process, and currently we have a hearing examiner that does the work for us. Most jurisdictions have hearing examiners, correct, Steve? That's sort of the way this is all going. So again, this council, if you guys want to come up and talk, we will certainly give you all 3 minutes. Don't expect a lot of feedback back and forth from us. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your concern about the foothills. I walk Skyline Drive every Saturday and Sunday, and that's the place where I go. I dive out of cars as they're coming my way. I understand that area very, very well. So I will leave it at that. If anybody wants to come up and address us regarding that, feel free to. I just understand that you're not going to get a lot of sort of questions from this group.
Well, thanks for inviting us, and thanks for the explanation, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate it. Yes, come on up. Still need your name and address for the record.
Karen Corner, 4700 North Ridge Drive, Wenatchee, Washington, 98801. I'm here to address the Black Rock subdivision, specifically related to fires. Fire is not being addressed by the city, and I believe that you need to put a moratorium on any future development or subdivisions until you get something in place to address wildfires. There's no, they can put a 15-foot buffer behind their house and then it'll grow weeds and people will throw trash back there and then it'll burn down the subdivision. And until the city steps up to the plate and develops some specific requirements and fines, fees, whatever you have to do to control wildfires, that needs to be done before the subdivision is approved. Before you let this subdivision go ahead, you need something in place. And if this is the driver for it, then so be it. But we can't keep just letting development happen without any plan in place for addressing fire. Thank you.
Okay. I'll make a comment to that one because we've done a lot on the fire side since the last set of fires. City of Wenatchee's got a WUI code, which is the Wildfire Urban Interface Code. This development is in that, which means the houses have to be built to a certain standard. They won't have fireproof siding, fireproof windows, fireproof roofing, all of the stuff that goes with it. They got a vegetation plan that they have to meet that's in the Firewise stuff. We're a Firewise community now. The county doesn't have a WUI code. The county will let you go build a shake roof any place you want to. So I take offense when you say we've done nothing. We've done a lot. Maybe it's not as much as you want, but don't think that we're sitting here just ignoring sort of the fire stuff. We're going to try to build a secondary road behind Broadview, I think soon, as a fire break. We're having a harder time getting a fire break that way. But we are cognizant of all of those things. And your staff members...
Invalid selection.
Oops. Is that you? That might be our cell phones working. I don't know. Anyhow, we've done a lot on that. So
Yes, I appreciate that. I
There's a
didn't
lot
realize
sort
that
of
you
going
did-
on there.
I didn't realize that you'd done so much, but I still think that there's, you do need bonding. You do need you don't just build it and then leave it. You need to have something in place to monitor it and make sure that you're protecting that interface.
Right,
And
thank you.
I didn't hear that happen.
Thank
when
you.
Thank you.
You should really enjoy it.
Yep.
Good evening. My name's Suzanne Hartman, and I live at 1715 Skyline Drive. In fact, I have a visual aid for you in case you need it. Our house is right there, which is on the northwest slope of Saddle Rock, and where we are the immediate neighbors to the west of the Tramps and this development. And our first experience with knowing about Black Rock Terrace Estates was in March of 2018 when there was a backhoe at the end of our driveway. And a very nice gentleman with the backhoe said, when asked, gee, what are you doing with the backhoe? Said, well, don't you know about the development that's coming? What development? And the very nice gentleman showed us plans for a 17-home development behind our house. That was the first instance that we had occasion to know about this development. Since that time, the mayor is absolutely correct. The council hasn't had a role up to this point in this development. The city staff and the hearing examiner hired by the city have taken their bite at the apple regarding the development, and not once did anybody stop and ask, is this the right thing to do? Maybe all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, but was this the right thing to do? I would suggest to the council, however, that you will have a role in terms of the plat approval, as well as there are 2 acres that need to be annexed yet into the city that are currently in the county, owned by the Tramps, but are not part of the UGA and will need to be annexed into the city, and that will fall to the council to approve. And those are, although they are not acres that will be developed initially, they are critical to the infrastructure, the roads and so forth that will be at that location. So there will be an opportunity for you, the council, to say, is this the right thing to do? Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Anybody else wish to address the council on any particular item? Hi, Fred. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you.
You still have to introduce yourself, even though I know you.
I'm Dr. Fred Deal, 1721 Skyline Drive, Wenatchee. We're the immediate west neighbors of Suzanne and 2 doors from the Tramps, and the west end of that Black Rock development will be immediately above our house, which is exactly where a horse fell down off the hill because it was so steep and had to be euthanized years ago. But my major concern is, as Suzanne said, is this the right thing for the view and the margins of Wenatchee? And my answer is no, that there are just multitude reasons why Skyline Drive is congested, and my partner Ed Farah is an example of that problem. And I just think that this thing if it does proceed forward, it could well lead to a bankruptcy. I think it would be very difficult to develop that. My friend that I brought with me, Stan Donow, is an old developer from Seattle, and he said, that guy's got to be nuts. And I just think that's somehow you got to just have the courage to say no. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Yes, come on up.
My name is Christina Eppers. I live at 10 South Cove Avenue, Unit 3A in Wenatchee. So you've heard a lot of the concerns that a lot of us have concerning fire safety. There's no access behind that property. I think that the Broadview fire is still in a lot of our minds with the sparks flying down over the town and catching the warehouses in town on fire. It's really scary. The fires are predicted to be worse. You probably know this. So we're all really concerned about protecting those boundaries of our town and not encroaching too much into the wildlands around that create kind of a buffer. The habitat issue is also an issue that a lot of us are concerned about, protecting the mule deer habitat, but also Wenatchee really advertises itself as an outdoor recreation town that with this easily accessible land that the public and the residents can all enjoy. And this development in particular would kind of, it's like a peninsula. It's a little projectile, little island in the middle of the Jacobson Preserve and the Saddle Rock area. The skyline is, you can see the view. We all know the view, right? There's basically a line at the bottom of skyline that differentiates between the developed zone and the wildlife zone, the recreation lands that we all have access to. And everyone's really concerned about protecting that for the public use and preserving it for future generations. Some of the other issues that, or one in particular that I haven't heard addressed by the other people that came up here, was runoff, erosion and runoff in this area. A few years ago, you probably remember, 5th Street flooded, and I've been told that everyone along 5th Avenue from the hills down to downtown are required to buy flood insurance now, which is kind of crazy. Expensive, and it could be worse with a development like this up on a steep hillside. So we just really want wise development. We know the town has to grow. We really need more housing, but we really want a forward-thinking plan that will help protect the public areas, the wildlife, and the town itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address the council on either Black Rock or any other thing that's either not or not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no, oh, here we go. You gotta jump higher. I won't be able to see you. There's no elevation there.
We just need to grow. I don't know. Ashley Olson, 1818 Skyline Drive. I just really, actually, Mayor, just wanted to thank you and appreciate you for sharing your role in the process and kind of educating our community of how land is developed. I think the concern and the appeal that were why folks are here and why folks have been having this conversation is that our community is asking for each of us to do what we can from our individual positions and our individual spheres of influence to protect our community, whether that be the safety related to fire, erosion. Again, I'm going to try not to repeat things that other people have shared, but I live on Skyline Drive, drive it every day. It's incredibly beautiful. Lucky to have it. And I also see that as something that when we invite people to our community is touted. Look at Saddle Rock. Look at Black Rock. That is our identity. And it takes a village to protect that. A few things. When I drive Skyline Drive, at various times during the year, there's literally water seeping out of the hillside Bigger concern around not just flooding, but what does that erosion look like? It's a very steep terrain. I currently live, again, and I'm asking the council and everyone to forego our individual interests, whether it's need or profit, in this, and really look at the greater community good. I'm struggling because I'm now on a board of an HOA that doesn't have the finances to replace a shake roof that's right below this, where this area of development would be, and easily catch on fire. And there are others in positions like this, and I think we really need to take a hard look at what each of us can do, whether that's the uncomfortable conversation in front of city council or those conversations that we're having with our neighbors, to be talking about the intentionality and future of our community. And again, I agree we need housing. I genuinely believe that this is not going to be creating more space for affordable housing based on the density and the location and the cost, right? And so I just implore you to take your positions and the power that you do have seriously in thinking about the greater good of our community. The icon that is that western part of our community is Edge, and protect the greater good for all of us from your role. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ashley. Anybody else? You might have to raise your hand high because I didn't see Ashley when she stood up. Seeing no other takers, we will move on. We've got a couple of presentations this evening. The first one is we've got a couple of our city employees in the room. So we're going to do that first because I know that Lance has got his little child with him and he probably wants to go someplace else. Not you, but your child. So come on up, John. Where are you at too? Both of you. Get up here. Oh, got the rest of her. Come on, Cliff, you coming up? No, you're just taking pictures. Oh. You have a microphone?
It's right there by Rob.
Rob, can I borrow this? Yeah. Hey, how are you?
Here, give it to her. You have to hold it. Hold the button in.
Is that working? Look at that. All right, so I won't even know how long ago this was. What, a couple months ago? So obviously we have city employees everywhere around the city doing their jobs, and these two gentlemen are code enforcement officers. So Lance and John, I got to get these on the right side. And they were out doing their job not that long ago, and they found some smoke going up and went and found a house fire and then got some folks out of the house pretty rapidly. So I don't know the specifics of the story. I'm going to give John the mic so he can tell you about it, and then we're going to recognize them for all of their great work. So, John?
So there I was just minding my own business. No, so Lance and I were going through an alley, and we were sitting there, and we see some smoke, and Lance is like, someone's got an illegal burn. And then Lance is like, no, that's more man-made. And we get around a garage, and we see the back end of this house on fire. So I had a scanner, realized this had not been called in, and said, we need to get around to the front and make sure people are out. We get around to the front, get into the house. There was a mother with her 3-month-old baby, the grandma, the husband, a dog, and then an adult son with Down syndrome that was autistic as well. We got everybody out of the house. The autistic adult did not want to come out of the house. I was afraid I was going to have to carry him, and he was not a small individual. And eventually, I think my tone changed, and he decided to come out. And we got them out of the house, and the mom went with the baby across the street. Lance was calling it in as we were going around the block, and fire department and police and everybody showed up and were able to extinguish the fire, but they were not aware that the house was on fire. So fortunately, we were at the right place at the right time and did what I think most people would do in getting people out of a house that's on fire. Your turn.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys doing what you do. I know. Listen, code enforcement isn't the easiest job in the world. These two guys do a great job, and then they save lives when they get a chance, so. Great. Thanks, Hunter. All right, so next I have on my agenda introduction of the new museum director, Kenny Sturgeon. Is she here?
Yes,
Oh, there
she
she is. Hi, Linda.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Linda Haglin, 103, well, I'll give you my work address, 103 Palouse in Wenatchee. Obviously, my day job is not this one. This is a volunteer, and I am honored to serve on the museum board. So I am here tonight representing the museum. Thank you, Councilmember Markart, who also is your representative on that. A little while ago, we did a search for a new executive director, and last November, we were very excited to have Kenny Sturgeon begin as our new museum director. So I'm here tonight for you to meet her, and we just, as a board, are thrilled. Her skills and expertise and her experience, it's going to be a great new day for the museum. So I'm just here to introduce her and let her say a few words, Mayor.
Hey, hi, Kenny.
Hi, Frank. Kenny Sturgeon, 1010 Harvard Avenue, Wenatchee. I've even got it down.
Yes.
I just want to thank you for letting me have some of your time. I won't take up too much of it, but you're going to be seeing me probably quarterly, just to give you updates on what we're doing, where we're going. I know you guys have Lyle to also do that, but I think hearing from me is very important. And I want to, please, looking forward to meeting. It's so odd to look at a council where there's 4 chairs of not people. Looking forward to meeting all of you individually and just talking more with each of you. One of the things that I just started at the museum is an overall organizational assessment of what we're doing well, where our challenges are, where opportunities are, how our resources are being allocated. And towards that end, one of the reasons I really wanted to talk with you today is I'd be very interested in hearing from each of you. Have you been getting the information that you need from the museum in a timely manner? And is there additional information that you would want me to bring to you that would just help keep you informed, help you keep the people who you represent and work with informed? If you can think of anything, I'd love to hear it now. And if it doesn't come to you now, I am more than happy, or for anyone who is not here, just to shoot me an email or give me a call, because I just want to make sure that we are keeping the city council informed, the mayor informed, in ways that are really meaningful for you.
Great. And you came from where? How did you land here?
Most recently, I came from Seattle. I was the Vice President of Science Engagement and Outreach at Pacific Science Center for 5 years. And then before that, I was working for about 8 years at a small heritage center in Salem, Oregon.
And got smart and found the right side of the Cascade Mountains for us.
My husband, who is with me, said that we are moving to Wenatchee. And I said, okay, when I started looking for a new job, which really narrowed the boundaries. And thankfully, there was actually a job I was qualified for.
Yeah.
So,
great. Well, I live by this motto, and because I'm a golfer, that if you want to get to know somebody, go play 18 holes of golf with them. So on the second side of that, if you can't play golf with them, get in the car and go to the Spelem with them and share Indian tacos, which Kenny and I had the chance to do. So I got to spend
yummy.
a number of hours in a car with Steve King, not driving, by the way, and Randy Lewis. So it was a great day. We had a blast, learned a lot about Kenny. She's wonderful. We're thrilled to have her here, and she's going to do a great job. And welcome to the city. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Any questions from the council?
I love the idea of the quarterly report.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Kenny.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
being here. So is it apropos tonight that we get to hear from our hearing examiner, Andy Codcamp? Andy, come on up and give us our little annual report, if you would.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Andy Codcamp, 435 Rondo Avenue. I am been your appointed hearing examiner for, I don't know, look at my report here, 2008. So first of all, has everybody had a chance to look at the report that I prepared? I can't really answer specific questions about specific projects, but it was an interesting year. There were 4 or 5 residential developments that came before me for hearing. They were approved. And after hearing what Mayor Kuntz talked about, if you will indulge me, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. I would
Sure.
like to kind of give you my background or my thoughts about the hearing examiner process. It's not new on the west side. Over here, Chelan County was probably one of the first jurisdictions to hire a hearing examiner, which they hired me in 2000. I was an assistant city attorney before that. And as you can see from my report, I probably have at least a dozen cities that I do hearing examiner work for, and another 6 or 7 or 8 counties where I'm the county hearing examiner. So I've got a ton of experience in this particular area. I love the job. Actually, absolutely love the job. Why the hearing examiner process became so popular for jurisdictions is because cities and counties were getting sued. Because the planning commissions and the councils were not following their rules and regulations. They were ignoring laws or making up new laws in place and having private conversations with developers or with opponents, and decisions were being made that resulted in jurisdictions getting sued. So that was the impetus, I believe, mostly for the hearing examiner process to be instituted by state statute, and then allowed by the state statute, and then adopted by various jurisdictions. My job as the hearing examiner for all of these jurisdictions are exactly the same. I conduct open record public hearings. I gather evidence. I review everything objectively is my goal. I can't let my personal passion or prejudice become an issue. It's never an issue. And then I make findings of fact and apply those findings to the law that has been set. Once again, I can't ignore the law. I can't make up new laws. I can't pretend that this law doesn't apply when it actually does apply. And then if I make a decision, and then based upon the evidence that's come in, both from the public and from agencies, I can make conditions of approval to try to minimize or mitigate the adverse consequences of any of the decisions, approval that do come through. So I just think that's important to realize, and I've heard people say, I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is what I think is a good idea, what I like, what I would like to see in any part of any county that I have jurisdiction or any city is absolutely irrelevant to any of the inquiry that I have to make. Nobody has in their code, is this a good idea? I have to look at the particulars and make a decision based upon the facts. The important thing is that city councils and county commissions, you do set the development regulations, and you do set the zoning designations, and with the help of planning commissions, put together a comprehensive plan, the big blueprint of everything. But from my standpoint, then my job is not to ignore what you've already done. So anyway, I wanted to make that very, very clear. And if you have any questions, as far as your planning department, Glenn DeVries does a wonderful job. I've worked with Glenn in other jurisdictions. He does a great job. Stephen Neuenschwander, who's come on probably in the last year or so, is also a great addition to City of Wenatchee's planning department. So when matters come to me before hearing, they are ready to come to a hearing and to have a decision made. So anyway, it's a planning department, as I said in my report, that you should be proud of. If you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Any recommendations for us? Any things you're seeing of concern? Any sorts of things that you're going, council, you should spend some time looking at this or that, either on the development code side of things?
Well, not administratively. I think administratively, everything's fine. I would look at just an interesting application. We did have the residential foothill zone that was passed in 2010 that has become what was applied for the recent Black Rock subdivision. And I would just note that was an interesting zoning district. in that it has what I characterize as rather enhanced protections for the area. They may not be as many protections as some folks think are necessary, but for the city code to have almost one half acre minimum lot sizes, that's very different than what you can have with a 4,000 square foot lot, down inside the city. Height requirements, setback requirements. So I guess the point that I'm making is that as you're going through your job, you can take a different zoning district and you can make a new zoning district and make the regulations that you think are appropriate to be there. So, and that's what was done in 2010. And so anyway, I don't have any other suggestions other than just making that insight.
Questions from the council? I would just say, and others, I've heard me say this before, I say it annually, I was on a council where we were the body of jurisdiction, and that wasn't any fun. So I'm glad we have the hearing examiner process. I think it works great and is as fair a process as we can do.
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be of service.
Thanks, Andy.
To the city of Wenatchee. Have a
Thanks
good
for
night.
being here early today, by the way. You're not billing us for that half hour when we were
No, I don't bill you at
exec
all.
session.
I
Okay,
just
excellent.
enjoy my work. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. All right, and our last presentation before we get to our action items is from the Chelan County PUD regarding their strategic plan. So who's coming up to do that? I see you got some commissioners up in the audience. They're going to come up, aren't they?
Well, I think
Andy, the whole crew coming up. What do you got going on?
just got me up front tonight. Unless they would like to join me, they're
Oh, they should come up.
Is this the controller here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, good evening, Mayor Coons, council members. I'm Justin Erickson, Managing Director of District Services for Chelan County Public Utility District. And to my right is Commissioner Bowles. And to his right is President Arsenault. Also in the audience is our Director of Customer Service, Andy Wendell.
That's not Andy back there. Hi, Andy.
And Neil Naruzzo, who is our new Communication Manager.
Okay.
Probably give you a
Hi,
wave
Neil.
as well. Really appreciate your time this evening. What we'd like to do is go through our strategic planning, give you an update on strategic planning. Some of you were involved in the process 4 or 5 years ago, and we're now at a point where we're doing a substantive update that will guide us from 2020 to 2024. And we would like to include you and the community in the process. So this evening, what I'd like to do is review where we've been over the last few years, talk to you about some key metrics and how we're doing, and then I'll finish with an overview of the key strategic questions that we feel are going to guide us in the coming months. So had some major successes through the last few years and in support of the last plan. The first of which I'll touch on is substantially reducing our debt. We've met our goal and have reduced our debt equity ratio below 35%. So paid off, see several $100 million worth of debt in the last 8 to 10 years. So mission accomplished there, and that will our future goal will be, of course, to keep it down below that 35% level. But we think over the course of the next planning horizon, we're going to keep it below that goal, but you're going to see less emphasis on that in the plan because we're going to shift to other priorities. What we learned in implementing the last strategic plan is as we've looked at our assets, we've got some challenges. And so we're continuing to invest heavily in key assets and in our people. Those images are some of our cranes that we thought we were maybe going to be able to get by with some limited repairs, and then you open things up and you find more significant damage and things that are necessary. And that's endemic really throughout our facilities, given the age that many of them are. And so lots of capital improvements that have been made and lots that we're in the process of making and planned investments in the very near future. So in terms of investing in assets and people, we do see that continuing in the new plan. We want to achieve better hydro capability and just distribution reliability. We also know that we're in a changing industry, and our staff has to change along with it as well. We're going to be a more data-driven organization, and so working to have all of our staff members also have individual development plans so that we can strive to meet our operational excellent goals and continuous improvement priorities. You probably are familiar with the Public Power Benefit Program. That was initiated and was a direct offshoot from the last strategic planning effort. And those investments have been made primarily in broadband expansion. We've also provided park passes for our customer owners so that you can visit the 3 state parks that are on lands owned by the utility district free of charge. And we've also started the Hydro Research Institute, which is just a great research institute. We've gotten commitments now from Corps of Engineers and from the Southern Company. And so we are well on our way to doing cutting edge research with our partners so that we can design and implement improvements to our facilities. And we've successfully implemented broadband access now to about 74% of the county. So at the start of the last strategic planning process, we were at about 64%. We believe we can get to 85, 90% over the next 5 to 10 years. That last 10% is going to be challenging because of the terrain in the county and some of those geographical challenges that we have. But we certainly are proud of our fiber system and hope that you are enjoying it as well. We know that we're in a rapidly evolving industry, and so a good example of that is last year and all of the staff resources and commission time that was devoted to cryptocurrency and putting rates in place that mitigate those cost risks to our customer owners. We also have a volatile energy market. So at the last strategic planning process, prices were $45, $50 a megawatt, and lately they've been more in the $25 to $30 range. So we've got to adjust based on market conditions. And we've got cybersecurity challenges as well that are really international in nature. I'll skip through some of these relatively quickly. This is actually a slide that was actually in the strategic plan from last time. And it just goes to illustrate that as we went through this process 5 years ago, we looked at expected scenarios, looked at high scenarios, low scenarios, and kind of middle of the range scenarios. What we've actually had occur is over the last few years, we've had really good revenue years. And so even with some of those market changes I described, we've been hedging our energy sales and had other efficiencies. And so you'll see from 2014 to 2018, kind of in the middle of the graph there, that blue shaded area indicates better than expected revenue, which is great because I've showed you those pictures earlier about our assets and about our investments. And so we've been able to pay down debt and make those investments without borrowing, which is a pretty significant deal. And so going forward, we don't expect those sunny skies to last forever. And so this, we continue to be very conservative in our estimation. And so what this is designed to show is that basically in around year 2022, based on our current projections, we'll be dipping below our financial target that relates to our minimum cash reserves. And so at that point, then we would probably have to enter the borrowing market to continue to make our capital improvements and make sure that we're sound financially. That's not unusual. Probably more unusual that we haven't borrowed money for 10 years and taken out more bonds to make improvements because of our cash situation. So nothing really to be overly concerned about, but it does reflect that our financial situation may be a bit more strained in the future. So I'll shift now and talk a little bit about key metrics. Probably no surprise to anyone here that we're blessed with very low rates. Sometimes we forget, though, that they're about a third of the rate that others experience on average in the state and about a quarter of the rate in the country. That's true especially for residential customers. Hydro capability. You see, presently we're in maybe the low 70 percentile, and so the way to think about this is that we have 30 turbines in our inventory, and you're always going to have some of those down for basic maintenance, so you're never going to run at 100% efficiency. So kind of the goal is to get to 90% or 89%, which is our goal to hit that by 2024. But because of the condition of our assets, we've had to take additional units offline to make repairs, and thus we're in the low 70 percentile right now. And with our improvement plans in place and continue to follow those schedules, we hope to again get to that about 89% by 2024, which the more we can generate then, the more we can sell on the market, hopefully keep our rates low and continue to reinvest in our assets. Reliability. Believe it or not, we measure it at this level, from 99.98 onward, and so really actually shooting for about a 99.99 to get us into the upper quartile. We're close, but we're not quite there. Again, aging infrastructure throughout the county. Continue to make a number of capital improvements.
When you say aging equipment, is that
Yes.
specifically substations? Are we talking about transmission? I mean, what part of that is
we're
in
really
terms of the distribution system?
Talking collectively, I don't know that there's any one particular area that has more problems than others, and I certainly encourage the commissioners to jump in if they know more specifics. But from what I understand, we've got kind of system-wide maintenance issues.
This is Gary Arsenault, Commissioner, Chelan PUD. I'd like to underscore one thing that hasn't been said, but I think needs to be heard, and that is that, keep in mind, the Rock Island Dam was the first hydro project built on the Columbia River. Construction began in the 20s, was finished in the 30s. That structure is what we're modernizing. Rocky Reach isn't that much newer, built in the 50s. So we're talking about equipment. Put this in a scenario of your home. Your house was built in the 20s, or if your house was built in the 50s, it's going to need some work. And although we've done a great deal of maintenance over the years, there was a period of time, and I'm sure most people in this room can remember, when Chelan PUD was tightening their belt. And having revenue was very difficult to develop at the PUD. And that was during a period of high debt. We were over $1 billion in debt. Since then, we have reversed course, paid out of pocket for the last 10 years for all of the work that has been done thus far, and paid our debt down roughly, greater than 50% from what it was at its highest water level. This has all been done by cash. So as we move forward, we're taking a look at, this is not your grandpa's electric market anymore. We're dealing with alternative energy. Our largest market, our largest customer, has found another supplier. And that supplier is alternative energy, solar and wind. The governor of the state of California has mandated 100% alternative energy. Well, of course, you can't do that when the sun goes down or the wind doesn't blow. So, but nonetheless, we are finding that our marketplace is very, very different from what it was historically. As we move into the future, and Justin has said it so well, we're having to reinvent ourselves if we wish to remain a viable source. The low-cost producer in the future is going to be the survivor. Those who cannot be the low-cost producer will be out of business. It's going to be that simple. So this is not the kind of market that any of us have encountered before in the past. So the strategic plan that Justin is discussing now, critically important as we move forward. We're asking for input from the city council, from the city, from the county, from all the residents in Chelan County, help guide us for our future. We are at a magic moment. We have had tremendously profitable years, but that gravy train is about to end. Those of you that understand hedging know that you would sell contracts out 5 years into the future. At the end of that 5-year period, the hedge is gone. You have to reset. Well, those hedges are now ending. So that's when we talk about the revenue stream ending, or at least modifying. There are now going to be new hedges issued at current prices where California doesn't need our power like they did 5 years ago. So that's the scenario that we find in front of us. And why we're here tonight, and I'll let Justin carry on from here, But the strategic plan is critical. And so we ask for your assistance, for your help, for your guidance, and for your steady hand in helping us make this 5-year plan something that takes us into this next period of time and preserves the value of the hydro projects for all the residents of the county.
Thank you, sir. Pleased to say that we've met our environmental metrics as well. We have habitat conservation plans in place for Rock Island and our Rocky Reach projects, and are meeting those with our next major check-in in 2021 on both of those projects. We've also, of course, have statewide requirements to meet relative to energy efficiency. And you might ask yourselves, well, we have really low power. What's the incentive to implement energy efficiency? Well, obviously, there's a state requirement, but secondarily, as was mentioned, since we sell our power at a profit on the wholesale market, any energy that we can conserve locally, then we can hopefully generate additional revenue on that market. So pleased to report that we've met our metric almost twice over relative to energy efficiency as well. And customer satisfaction remains very high. Of course, rates are low. That's probably a fair portion, but we definitely think that what we're doing, being here tonight and communicating with you and with our customer owners, is also important and hopefully reflective in these high scores as well. So, as part of any strategic planning process, visioning process, you have an opportunity to look at your mission, vision, and key values. And so we did this as well, and I'll be very brief in this part so we can kind of spend some more time on the key questions. Probably the couple of key things to point out here is that quality of life in the mission statement was brought front and center versus the previous iteration, where it says to enhance the quality of life in Chelan County by providing sustainable, reliable utility service. So very intentional on that point. I just wanted to note that for you. And then one of the things that came out of the last process was a statement that really wasn't ever formally embedded into the vision. And so we've done that now as well with this update that incorporates the best value for the most people for the longest period of time. And that probably resonates with you as well, and how you try to look at things relative to your constituents. Made a few other changes to the vision related to continuous improvement, innovation, and performance. I won't go in detail on those. And made some slight changes to the values. So jumping now to key questions, I just want to make sure that we have time to go through these and answer any questions that you have. So we've worked through and identified 6 key issues that we think are going to kind of drive this process over the next 6 months or so. The first question is related to rates. So we have not had a rate increase in 7 years now, and since 2000, rates have only been increased 9%. And so relative to inflation, relative to many other rate schedules that are common, we're a little bit behind. We're maybe significantly behind. That said, we're in a good financial position right now, and there isn't an immediate need to increase rates. However, as we discussed, the future is uncertain, and we do believe that leaner times are ahead. And so we have a discussion to engage with the community, and that is what is most appropriate. Is it most appropriate to keep rates as low for as long as possible? But then you might get into a situation where you might have to have a more substantial, maybe double-digit rate increase, or maybe a series of double-digit rate increases. Or would it be more prudent to adopt a rate schedule that implements slow, gradual, annual increases of maybe 2% to cover inflationary cost, for example? You've probably struggled with this as well with your own utility system. And so there's other subcomponents to the rate question that I won't elaborate on further, but just know that we're going to really get into this challenge in depth with the community, and we invite your input. The second key question is related to relicensing. So Rock Island is an incredible asset, so has an esteemed history, and that license is set to expire in 2028. And so what we go through a relicensing process, and some of you may know about that. It wasn't too long ago that we did that for Lake Chelan and Rocky Reach, but it's a very formal process where we undertake studies and seek federal approval for a new license term. That license term can be anywhere from 30 to 50 years, and there's a default term of 40 years. Recently, there was some new legislation that was enacted that we supported and really generated that allows us now to consider taking early actions. So before, if you had a bunch of improvements to make that were related to relicensing, you were kind of discouraged from making them ahead of time because you wouldn't necessarily get any credit towards your relicensing permit and your term. And so thanks to the new legislation, we now have the ability to consider early actions. So look at our project related to Rock Island, look at things that we might want to do or might even have to do through the relicensing process, but instead of waiting to 2028 or after the permit is approved, we could potentially do them now. And that would benefit the community. It could also benefit the district and customer owners because if we do those things, we're going to want something in return, and that would be a commitment for support for a longer license term. And so this is pretty cutting edge. This literally became enacted and signed by the president in December. And so we would be kind of one of the first utilities, probably the first utility that would actively pursue this. So we're going to have a conversation with stakeholders about that and with the community. Third question is related to wholesale or retail marketing. And so I think we kind of hinted around it earlier, but for those of you that don't know, so the retail rate is so inexpensive because it's heavily subsidized. So the true cost of production is significantly more than the 3.22 cents that you saw earlier. But because of what we're able to do on the wholesale market, we're able to subsidize the rates locally. And so one option is to focus less on wholesale marketing and more on retail marketing. Look at ways that we can maybe help drive economic development locally. But we're also going to have to assess that impact on the rate structure and the potential impacts on the subsidization of rates. So this is all these questions are really values questions. You know, we've got technical experts and engineers and economists that can run through that handle the day-to-day operations and are excellent technical experts. But these 6 key questions are really values questions, and that's where we really need your input and the input of the community. Question number 4 is related to growth, and it really gets to the heart of the question of should growth pay for growth, or what is, if not, what is the appropriate balance? And so you probably struggle with that same question. The developer comes to you and wants to put into development. Do you pay for the full cost of line extensions and sewer extensions, or is some of that cost borne by the developer? And so we have that same challenge here. Do we put in a substation in anticipation of growth, or for a large singular user, or do we put that in with a cost share? And so we have, depending upon the infrastructure today, we have varying levels of involvement. Some where we provide some assistance depending upon the particulars, and some where the full cost is borne by the applicant or the developer. And so we want to just check in on that question, on that balance, and see where the community is at. Aesthetics, very important. You had lots of discussion earlier on aesthetic impacts, and so we have those same kinds of questions with our customer owners relative to our infrastructure. That could be a common example is the undergrounding of utility lines, but that could also include things like our substations. How do we landscape them? Do we landscape them heavily? Are they? And then, of course, there's questions about fire-wise and making sure that our plantings are appropriate as well. And so, all of our infrastructure has much of our infrastructure has visual impacts, and we can lessen that to some degree. But there is costs associated with that. especially with undergrounding. And lastly, the Public Power Benefit Program. Been a great program, very popular. We've been able to do some great things that didn't really have a strong business case for them through this initiative. But unfortunately, we do see a future that is less advantageous in terms of revenue. And so we do need to rethink this program and ask, do we want to continue it? And if so, what are some of those key initiatives? Is it a continuation of what we've been doing, more fiber expansion, et cetera? Or is it a combination maybe of other things as well? And this is just a snapshot of many. So we have many other things that we're working on, of course, and other strategic priorities. But I just wanted to leave you with this as well. On your dais is a full context document, which is helping set the stage for strategic planning. It provides a lot of the key data and information, and encourage you to look through that. I will leave some on the table and back to for members of the public that would like copies of that, along with a copy of the presentation as well. And I will conclude with our process and time frame. You may be asking yourself, well, this sounds great. How can I be involved? And so this first phase is doing what we're doing tonight, coming out to city councils around the county, community councils, civic organizations, and introducing this topic and where we're headed over the next few months. And then we're going to be doing a deep dive on these 6 questions with kind of core topic teams. So we invite you, if you have an interest, to reach out to us, reach out to me. I can leave some cards as well. And Allison knows how to get a hold of me. And I'd be happy to talk to you about that, how you can be a part of this process if you like to devote probably 8 to 12 hours on some of these topics as we dive deeper. And then we'll be asking the countywide, we'll be initiating outreach with them, an opportunity. You may recall last time you probably got something in your mailbox. It was pretty successful. We got, I think, about 4,000 total comments and responses through that effort. So we're going to, we recognize people are busy and most people can't dive deep in these topics and have other things pressing in their lives. And so, but we do want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be involved. And so we do anticipate a all household mailer. We also have a website that's dedicated to this process as well, called ourpublicpower.org. And we hope to complete this in August or September of this year. So we got lots of things happening. And so we've got a relatively tight time frame on this. So at this time, we invite your questions. And I'd also like to turn to the gentleman to my right and see if they have any comments they'd like to add.
Dennis?
Yep. Dennis Bowles, Chelan County PUD Commissioner, and I guess I'd just like to emphasize 2 things, to the mayor, to the council, and to the people of Wenatchee who are attending the meeting tonight, that Chelan County PUD is your organization. There are electeds who represent you, but we don't own it. We have a great staff who work very hard for you every day, but they don't own it. You do. And so this is an effort to reach out to the municipals, to every corner of the county, and say, since you own this thing, what is it that you want it to look like? How would you like it to function? What's most important to you? And if you pick up one of the items, if you'll take a look at the executive summary, last paragraph on the first page, I want to emphasize one item, and it's a commitment by the commission and the staff to explicitly work toward a greater degree of collaboration internally and significantly to reach out and work toward a greater collaboration externally. And so the phrase that's been floating in the Greater Valley, that we're better together, is really true. And so my plea this evening is, please help us understand what it is you want and what you want it to look like and how you want it to function. And we'll do our very best to deliver on that. Again, thanks for the opportunity this evening. And
I know the last
appreciate
strategic
you.
plan from 5 years ago, we were greatly involved. I know I was involved in it. I think Allison was. I'm pretty sure Steve was, and other staff members. So we will participate again when those processes get started. And sort of, those are very interesting questions about rates analysis and local load versus outside load, and we've sort of, on our utility side, have gone a little bit further, and not that developers pay for growth. We sort of have a spot where we're sort of getting trunk lines in and doing some of that. I equate that to sort of getting the power to your substations and moving them all around and getting them sort of prepared. So I'd lean towards that a little bit as something that I think the utility should be doing. Jim, the other day, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, he's getting little power surges in the morning. He blamed it on cryptocurrency, so I'm not saying it was true, but he blamed it on that. So
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I just think that more reliability and stuff, and I think those substations are really important. And I know you're putting them all over the place, and if we can cooperate with you guys on locations, I know you've got some already set around here, and we're prepared to work with you on those.
Very good. And we're all accessible. I always kind of chuckle when somebody says, well, I tried to get a hold of you, but I couldn't. It's Wenatchee, folks.
Yeah, I know.
We're very available. Please,
Cafe Mela.
Please please find us, and we'll give you whatever time you need, because we do want to hear from you.
Great. Any questions from the council?
Sure, since I've known Commissioner Bowles for 40-something years.
He coached you in basketball too, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I got two of my former basketball players sitting here this evening. So
I overall see this as so aggressive, and obviously it's that debt reduction is the only possible way you have a chance at this. And that's how I see the overall picture. If you wouldn't have had that, you would be in trouble. I see that. You'd have to get crazy with the rates, go be aggressive at other parts. So you are in a great position, it seems like. So looks like you guys have done a great job, but it's very, very aggressive. But you got it. I'm glad the debt's down. So.
The debt reduction has been very gratifying. It was 12 years ago, it was $1.06 billion. And we're well below, 500 million now. And we cannot pay it off any more aggressively than we are without paying penalties. So we will continue our debt reduction as committed and try and avoid the penalties for our early payment and be judicious of those terms. But again, Mike, really appreciate the comment, because without the debt reduction, we would have been severely handicapped in terms of what we would be able to do now, improving the infrastructure for cash. So it's a very different proposition, and it's great to be here. It really is.
Any questions for the commissioners?
Just a comment of the planning process that you used, what it was, 5-6 years ago. I was impressed. I mean, that was very clear, laid out process, and the information that came out of that when you got done with it. And hopefully we can have a similar result with this. I have two questions. One is I might put it as almost a curiosity question, but in terms of your comments about one of your questions about rates, okay, we talking about subsidized rates, and we enjoy. Speak for myself, but I think most people in this county really appreciate the subsidy to get the rates we have. Do you know just off the top of your head what the actual production cost is per kilowatt?
Yeah. It's about 5.5 cents. So it costs us about 5.5 cents to generate and distribute the electricity that you receive in your home for 3.2 cents.
Okay. So in thinking long term here, that that balance, and we go through similar kinds of things, little here, little there, someplace come from here, someplace come from there, kind of thing. But it's the fact that we have the lifestyle that we have here in this valley. I don't know if this is anywhere part of your study, but someplace the quality of life that we enjoy here does have a lot to do with the utility that we have. Those two dams sitting on the river give us tremendous advantage that a lot of people don't have. So when you had your slide up there very quick, went by pretty fast, but when you look at the national average, for example, it was 12.5 cents or something like that. I mean, yeah, we could be, in businesses and everything else, we'd be really in a different position if we didn't have what we have. So we appreciate you and the work that you do to give that to us. The second question has to do with this long-standing process of salmon mitigation. What in your crystal ball, what do you see down the line? Is this are we kind of holding our own on that? Is this going to take off on us again?
Okay.
Are we going to save the last salmon yet, or?
Well, Chelan County PUD is in kind of a unique position. And to the wisdom of people who came long before Gary Arsenow and myself or Justin, I think Andy Wendell was around at the time, but during the last licensing process, the federal government set out a series of propositions of goals that we needed to meet in terms of our habitat conservation programs. And Chelan County took a different position at that time and welcomed the federal government to set those standards, but made a request that was different than anybody else had asked at that point. And we said, we have the personnel and we have the resources to manage those goals. If you will just leave us alone and let us invest in our people and in our assets, we will meet or exceed your goals. And Chelan County PUD has the noted distinction of being one of the few utilities across the United States that has met or exceeded those standards. And we do. We meet and exceed those standards every year related to our fish habitat. And our goal is to make the dams invisible to the fish, is kind of the cliche that we use. And so we aspire to a passage program that allows salmon to migrate to and from our waterways and meet or exceed those goals that have been established. And it's been successful. Other utilities are now making the same requests and following through in a similar format, but it's been very, very successful for us. And I think the article in the Wenatchee World a couple of days ago, reiterated the goals established and met by Chelan County PUD. And we're fortunate to be able to work with partners on both sides, Douglas and Grant, who share that same vision and the same proposition. And so cooperatively, the Mid-Columbia has been doing well. It's a really difficult proposition when you look at the situation that is occurring with the orcas and the preservation of that life stream. And, we hold very sincerely that any endangerment to the extinction of a species is a harbinger of things for all human life or other life, in the future. And so it's a serious commitment. And we spend hundreds of millions of your dollars to make sure the fish have the opportunity to continue their life cycle as well. And we're proud of the work and we want to continue to do it well.
Thank you.
Lyle, any questions?
No, I'm just looking forward to the process and get involved in it and thank them for coming here.
All right. Well, thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. We appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Council members, let's just take a little 3-minute break at 6:30 and then we'll reconvene in a couple minutes.
Good idea. Alrighty.
All right, good evening. We are back. So we were getting ready to start our action item, so I just want to confirm, for those that are keeping score, that council members Kulas and Esparza are still with us this evening.
Aye.
Good.
Excellent. Technology is working. All right, so our first action item today is a budget request for staffing needs. I'm not going to use the term amendment because I think today is not going to be the amendment that would require a majority of the council plus one, but mostly just sort of setting direction to staff so that when we do that in the future, we'll have that. So I think there are 3 employee positions, so I'll turn over to Allison and Brad, and I think perhaps even Dave and Rob, and at some point we'll come up and chat. So Allison?
So we are fortunate to have Brad. Brad originally was going to be out of town, so I had set to present this, so it's nice to have Brad here. So our typical process that we have been doing with the Finance Committee is to have requests for budget that are in between budget times come to the Finance Committee, and they are authorized throughout the year. This request for staff came to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee is coming to the full council with support for this request, but really wanted the concurrence of the council, and then this would then be folded into our normal process and would come to you later with our budget amendment ordinance. So I actually, in quickly putting together an overview of the agenda item, titled that incorrectly. So, and so the presentation was for the addition of staff. The first one was for a half-time parks maintenance and cemetery worker. Half of that position was inadvertently left out of the 2019 budget. The second request is we are receiving the community center back into our operation because we received notice of a cancellation of the management contract from Community Action Council. And so we need staff to run the community center. And so there is a request for that position. And then the last request is for an economic development project manager. We are a busy city. We are a busy public works department, busy planning department. And as our the director staff of these areas have talked, we really do need a project manager level position to help with the $37 million in work that Steve is managing through economic development. And so as you go down in the report, there is a budget impact that was anticipated, basically 9 months for each of those positions, with a 2019 impact of $161,000. And so, Brad, is there anything that you would like to add? And then we obviously have the department directors here that can speak further to the individual requests if council would like that.
The only thing I would add as far as the total budget cost of this, typically when we start our budget process, we've got a little bit of room in our budget. So as we did 2019's budget, we had some room to grant recurring requests from the departments. Looking at 2020's budget, we'd probably have a little bit of room in 2020's budget to grant some of the department's requests. This amount will probably take up quite a bit of that room for 2020's budget. So
2019's budget.
Sorry. Well, no, 2020. Looking at
No,
next
I'll
year,
look at
going
the
into
following.
next
Gotcha.
year's. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So when we these requests are sort of being prioritized going forward for 2020's budget. I agree with the finance committee that these positions are going to be needed in the next year or two, and I think they're important.
And what I would say is I think generally the finance committee is approving things like, oh, I forgot that so-and-so needed new carpet, or this air conditioning unit broke, or this roof is leaking, or this came up. Do you want? I mean, it's sort of been those sorts of things. In terms of additional employees, that's a rare event. Clearly in January of the year after you just adopted a budget, it's even a rarer event. The half cemetery, half parks maintenance was a oops. The parks request, we didn't know when we did the budget that we were gonna have, take over the community center, and we've had it in the past, and we know that it takes an employee or close to that to run that facility. And then I think with respect to economic development, we denied this sort of an assistant role last time, not quite at this level. But when you really look at the workload that we're asking of that department, it needs an additional body just to kind of keep up with all of the work. And listen, you could hire a person to give them to, you could say, Rob, you're in charge of NEPA, and Rob's going to go hire a person to do NEPA. You can say, Rob, you're in charge of North Wenatchee Avenue Development, and he's going to hire someone. So ultimately, it's probably to me less about where the body sits, other than we need a body, I think, to make sure that we get the projects we've asked these guys to take on to try to get them somewhere close to a finish line. And, we've talked a lot about the development that we're doing and the things that are happening. And, in essence, whether it comes out of our general fund or out of reserves, this is the time, I think, to put our pedal to the metal and try to get some of these things sort of out the door. So I know the Finance Committee had a long discussion about these because I think they're just a bit odd to do them so early after the year. But ultimately, I think the Finance Committee sort of approved them. And Mike had a bunch of questions, and so, do you guys want to hear from the departments themselves? You want to hear from Dave and from, I guess, Aaron, and what do you guys want to hear?
I want to add one more thing too. I think in the city, as we are doing our employee planning and looking out long-term, as you know, we have an aging workforce. And I really think a key theme to these hires in particular is succession planning. So, building in the competencies in parks and in the cemetery, and in economic development with some of those projects. I think long-term we want that expertise in our city, and so that's pretty critical.
Well, I'll interject here. So I agree with you, Allison, on the cemetery, that, that was a oops, we forgot to do. My concern on these three positions is the one on the economic development. It's really not an economic development person. It's a person to maintain. And I know it's just a word, but we as a city council have decided to do these projects because we're going after this money and we're looking to do this and this and this. And I am one of the first ones that says, okay, enough's enough. But my issue with this is, and why I wanted to bring this up to the city council so everybody looks at it instead of just the finance committee, because it's so important that we understand we've created this and we need to maintain it, but we better stop doing some things. And that's where I'm at. It's really, to me, I'm going to look at it, it's a maintain the developments that we've committed to. And I don't want to lose our money doing this. I believe everything we've asked to do is accurate and what we should be doing. I just want to make sure we call it maintains. I want to call it maintain in my language. I don't want this person to be gone in a year. I don't think that's right to hire people. So it's got to be, if we don't need this person 2 or 3 years from now, then this person needs to be able to adapt or go to a different spot. So that's a concern of mine.
I think again, we don't hire unless we believe the work's going to be here for a long time. Our city is in a great financial place in terms of reserve accounts and those sorts of things. We fully expect the economy will slow down at some point. We certainly have the ability to handle, I think, almost any sort of slowdown that isn't caused by some sort of nuclear war or something that we can't even begin to think about. So I believe these positions will be long-term. Things sort of change along the route. If our pool ends up leaking and we don't have a pool for 2 or 3 years and someone, we might readjust that way. There's other things that we would do sort of, I think, going forward. So I think in a lot of ways, and I've said this for quite a while, I think you get out of what you put into economic development, right? If you do nothing, there's cities around here that do nothing, and guess what they get? They get nothing, right? And there's other governmental organizations that could do economic development and have chosen not to. We've chosen to sort of jump in for a lot of reasons, and I think we're pretty good at it. We'll see at the end of the day, once we get our developments done, how they all work out. But I think we're doing things for the right reason. We don't have a lot of land left. And, do you really want to have sort of a bit of a say in how that last little bit gets developed, right? Do you really want to have an idea what North Wenatchee Avenue is going to look like? We didn't have to be in that game at all. We could have let it go, right? Northwest Wholesale would have rebuilt there, right? And WashDOT would be selling to the highest bidder, and you might have a storage unit there, right? And if that's what you want, we can get out of that game. We're in it, and I think we're in it for the right reasons. I think the ultimate, it will all pay for itself. We're asking too much of one person to try to execute all of the things that we're asking that person to execute. And I think we need more help. And I agree with you. It could be in any sort of department. To me, it's not the department. It's the workload that we've asked that department to do and get it to the finish line. And I sort of go by this, and I've talked to you guys a little bit about this, just hire really smart people, right? Put them in this department, put them in that department, just hire smart people and get them here. And they're going to pay for themselves, right? They're going to make things happen that makes the city proud, and you put them in the right role. So I expect this person, if we hire someone in Steve's department, is going to be smart, and is going to make us look good, and is going to get things done in our city and make it better for us. That's sort of the goal. Jim, any thoughts?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, Allison or Brad, but and Dave just isn't here. The community. Oh, there he is, hiding back there. You blocked my view. Thank you. We're kind of inheriting, getting the community center back, but we also have plans that to basically have another tenant in there and so forth. I think I'm correct in assuming that the janitorial maintenance, all those kinds of things for the down there was handled by the current tenant, so that we didn't have somebody down there. I mean, we still were responsible for HVAC and all that kind of stuff, someone haywire, but the day-to-day operational maintenance, that kind of stuff was handled by community. Was it community action?
Community action.
Yeah. So, yeah. I guess my question is that you're looking at this position to be kind of a part-time down there and part-time at different times doing other things for the department. When the new tenant takes over, will they assume those roles, and then this other half-time that was there, now does that become full-time for parks? Or do you need a full-time?
Yeah, we've asked for that full-time position since 2012, I think, is when we first started asking for it to get us up to full staffing.
Okay.
The community center just added a whole another hiccup to it.
Mm-hmm.
The staff person will be housed at the community center. Their office will be down there. They'll be there. When we had Dave Gerlach down there, that's where his office was, and that was supplemented with his family to help out to cover the rentals and things like that, and to do the custodial. We will contract out for like a 3-day-a-week custodial and one hopefully deep clean, because the facility's kind of gotten well used, maybe, for at least the next 2 years. And then we'll go through that RFP process, and maybe that kind of the goal, at least from our standpoint, is to hand the keys off to a new person and say, there you go, it's yours. 40 years later, give us a call. And then have them take over everything for the building at that point. At that point, then this position would be rolled back in to our department to finish out and actually do the duties that we see the need for right now.
Okay. Then in the community development position, has there been a job description created at this point for that position?
I think the four of us, Rob, Steve, Glenn, and I have met, and we've looked at tasks that need to be put into a job description, and Steve has run that past HR in order to get the salary comparison.
Okay.
that's what, so yeah,
Okay.
we laid out the 5 bullets.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and
So this allows essentially from the, the spread in our packet here, the spreadsheet that you, you had, typical of government, nonprofit kind of job, you get a job and you end up having 2 jobs, kind of thing, amount of time you put in. So this position would allow you, kind of where you're doing a lot of that, or are doing, not a lot of it, you're doing all of that. This would allow you then to essentially do the real community development, economic development kind of work, be the front guy to do that. When it gets time to now the implementation and so forth and tracking and managing and that project manager kind of thing, that goes now to this other person.
So the project manager will take care of a lot of stuff that I call the managing the actual project, where you've got to have concentrated focus effort. So yeah, it'll basically allow us to move the project faster, move them more efficiently, and there's a lot of things that we just haven't started in. So yeah, it's going to be a team effort. They'll help in certain meetings. Some meetings they'll be working, managing the project. It's I don't want to say that it's going to free me up to do something else, because it's not. It's basically going to be working as a team.
And some of these projects require a really deep dive. You look at NEPA for Confluence Parkway.
Oh, yeah.
The process over that and working with the consultant, and then looking at the reports that are going to be generated and directing that effort, that's a full-time job in itself.
A great example of today, we have a 65-page scope of work for the design of the building. Somebody needs to really look at that closely. Aaron's going to look at it, but I'll look at it. But to go through it 65 pages, you better plan on about 6 hours of really spending time.
Yeah.
You won't find a 6-hour block in my day. So it's piecemeal, and it's that kind of stuff slides.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of big piece that
Who's working on the job description? You said 4 of you? Who are the 4? Was it 4 people?
Yeah.
Is Rob Jaberman involved with that?
Glenn, Rob, Allison.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I think the other part that we don't remember is that John Ajax sort of helped Steve from time to time do their LRF calculations and could go in and deep dive on different census tracts and zoning issues, and did some work for him. And John, of course, is retired, and so we haven't replaced him yet. And so we're still sort of, again, we're trying to, but we're just, again, it's another one of those things that someone that was helping him probably quarter time is gone.
Yeah.
Right? And then Tammy helps, but Tammy's got another job to do. And so it's just, again, it's a little bit of.
Allison, can you make a note when you get the job description, written out in a way, send copy?
Yep,
Appreciate
absolutely.
It. Thank you.
I could send you those 5 bullets very quickly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Is it Ruth and Mike?
And I think
They're
the
still lined up.
motion would be to add, as requested, to authorize the addition of the positions as requested, and we would bring forward the future budget amendment ordinance.
So you really don't want to have the term amendment in
Right.
in the motion language, okay?
Okay.
Maybe we could say motion to authorize a 2019 budget adjustment.
That sounds like an amendment.
Yeah.
Oh.
Staffing additions.
2019 staffing additions.
That will ultimately affect the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like a motion to authorize 2019 staffing adjustment or staffing needs as presented. Yeah.
Okay, I would make that motion, Your Honor, with that language.
Second.
We got a motion by Councilmember Bailey and a second by Councilmember Poyer to adopt motion or to authorize a 2019 staffing needs adjustment as presented. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Saddle Rock remedial action. Who's doing that? Oh, hi, Charlotte.
Hello.
Dave's got you busy, doesn't he?
Yes. So I'm here today for the Saddle Rock Interim Remedial Action Project. So we put out an RFP. This is for the arsenic remediation up on Saddle Rock. This is phase 1. We put an RFP out and we got 6 proposals, really good proposals. We had a 5-person review committee. It was Dave and I and Rob from Parks Maintenance and 2 people from our Arts, Parks, and Rec Commission, including Commissioner Longonger back here.
Hi, Dan.
And so we reviewed their proposals and we came to a pretty unanimous consensus that geoengineers was our top choice for that. We brought it before the 9-person Parks and Rec Commission and they approved our recommendation or recommended that we come to you folks with that. And so I'm requesting that we can authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign the consultant agreement with geoengineers. And I'll take any questions you have.
Timing for this work?
So we have a pretty aggressive schedule on this, and we're hoping to get this done this summer.
Okay. When I say get it done this summer, do the actual work in the mountain this summer?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
But this is just phase 1, so this won't be all of it. We'll try to see if we can sneak in the rest, but budget is a constraint.
Perfect.
Charlotte, is this arsenic in there? Is that just naturally existing arsenic, or is this from processing?
Well, it's from mining, a small mining works. So this was DNR land before it came to us in a roundabout-ish sort of way, thanks to CDLT. But yeah, so this is just from waste piles from very small mining operations.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
So there's arsenic all over the mountain. It's just in normal soils. This just happens to be
that's
concentrated
my question is
as
just because
of the mining. Yeah.
And you can kind of see
digging it out, or is it coming from where they had a processing plant and it's concentrated?
Not even really that big a mining operation, just small, very small. You'll maybe have seen some adits out there, some holes related to mining, so that's where they came out of. And you'll notice there's a very obvious different colored pile up there, right where the switchback hangs a left to go up. And so that's one of the piles. So it's kind of a lighter cream color.
Right.
Yeah.
How many sites are there up there that have to be cleaned up?
So there are 7.
7.
We're addressing 4 in this first.
And I think the long-term plan is if Steve King doesn't work out economic development, we can start mining Saddle Rock again. There's gold in our hills, right? Yeah.
Well, Your Honor, I'll make a motion for the city council to approve the selection of geoengineers as a consultant for the Saddle Rock Interim Remedial Action Grant, IRA project, and authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign the consultant agreement for the project.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Poyer, second by Councilmember Bailey to approve the selection of geoengineers as a consultant for the Saddle Rock Interim Remedial Action Grant Project and authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign the appropriate contracts. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you very much.
All right, next item is City Council compensation. Allison Williams.
And Carrie would be here this evening, but she had to be away, so I am helping with the presentation of this. And so as you'll remember, last fall, we did go through the process to look at comparisons for both mayor and council. At that time, council directed that we bring back an ordinance to adjust the council salaries to $1,000 a month starting January 1st of 2022. At that time, we thought we could include a COLA. A COLA cannot be included unless you have a salary commission because council members are not able to weigh in on or approve budgets that would enlarge their own salaries. And so we can go through a process. We did have a discussion about tying it to a CPI. That would take some analysis on our part. Our city attorney was not familiar With that being valid, there was nothing that we could find. Brad thought there may be something, so that is some analysis that we could do, but we had promised you to bring this ordinance back at this meeting. And so we would ask for your feedback and approval of the ordinance at this time, if you would like to do that.
So the thought being that if this ordinance gets passed tonight, then the council's salary would go up to whatever it is, excuse me, January 1 of 2022 or so, which is obviously neither one of these 2 election cycles through that.
Right.
So that makes the part that they've never increased their own salary. Excuse me. And then I guess the next part would be spending some time with Steve Smith and MRSC and Brad and whoever, and just making sure that we get to a legal conclusion regarding how we might put some sort of cost adjustments in there that make sense.
If we are able to do that, we could bring back an amendment then. Yes.
Okay. And bring it back before the end of the year or late in the fall or something. Okay. And I just want to make sure we stick with that and come up with a plan for that, because you don't want to keep falling behind and then making big jumps, and sometimes they look silly. And all right,
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
One question, well, 2 questions, or one question and one statement. In section 1, it refers to council positions 1 to 7, which was our traditional. Is that still how we refer to the 7 council members? Or do we refer to them as positions for districts 1 through 5 and at-large A and B? That's one question. And the second one was, in our discussion, we never really talked about the council putting in COLAs. We talked about some automatic increase. And I realized that the research has been kind of shallow on that to this point. I don't want to see that going until some nebulous date, so I'd like to really have that firmed up so that the legal staff has a direction as to when we want that done, and I'd suggest that be done probably, let's see, this is January, probably within the next 6 months. I don't think it takes that long to figure out whether we move to something that follows the state salary commission, something that sets up our own salary commission. But I just don't want to leave it hanging out there.
Okay, so the hanging out there part I think we can deal with internally. Steve, you need to make sure you get us something and work with Brad and sort of get back to us on that. Is it important that we allocate the names correctly, because we can obviously adjust that where we talk about positions 1 through 5 and at-large A and at-large B. That's an easy change. And I got no problem making that. I think it's probably a little bit clearer, to be honest with you.
We're probably going to run into that on a pretty regular basis since we made that change.
Right.
Okay, we still see stuff showing up from the old commission system language and things. We're talking about commissioners.
Right.
Still there.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, just go ahead.
Yes.
Hey, I'm just curious. So you're asking not to, you're not really like this motion at this time until we do some other research?
I'm okay with the ordinance. I think we were asking for some additional research to be incorporated in this particular ordinance, and so that's why I'm saying, at least from my perspective, I knew that the council couldn't just add a COLA by adopting the every year we do the salary schedule. And I just don't think that the research was completed that we asked for. Maybe we weren't as clear when we were requesting it. So now what I'm saying is I want the council to be very clear that we want this defined as to whether these changes in the compensation can be tied to something more objective, so that when we haven't made adjustments for I don't know how many years, 10 years, 12 years. Councilmember Bailey might remember. It's been a long time. And so when when you're budgeting, you know, it's easier to have a slight increase than it is to have a larger increase. Is all I'm saying. And so I'm just looking for something that's more a little built into the system, not unlike how we handle our sewer and water rates that are tied to the implicit price deflator. It's just, you know, something that's just a little more automatic. And so anyone running for council every 2 years knows, if they're interested in the compensation part, what that is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I just think we need to make sure that so I think he said he's okay with the way it is. He wants to have more discussion about how that might work and what mechanisms. So Steve and Brad need to work on that, bring something back. And then, so you've got 6 months to get back to us on something with that. And then, I guess the issue is, do we want to change the language to indicate 1 through 5 and then at-large A and at-large B? If that's the case, we should probably make the motion to have those changes put into it. And I think we only refer to that in one place, right?
Yeah, down section 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I think it's one place I saw it.
Well, and thinking that there already are 7 positions, so do we really have to delineate
You don't have
between
to.
at-large A and
It's
at-large
not a big
B?
deal. I just, again, if you wanted to, you could.
Well, I'll make a motion for the city council to adopt ordinance number 2019-03, establishing compensation for the city council members, establishing an effective date, and repealing ordinance number 2007-38 to the extent it is inconsistent with this ordinance, and in changing the wording to District 1 through 5 and at-large A and B.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Poyer, second by Councilmember Markart to adopt ordinance 2019-03, establishing compensation for the city council members, establishing an effective date, repealing ordinance 2007-38 to the extent it is inconsistent with this ordinance, with the changes that in section 1 should read the salary for each person holding council positions 1 through 5 and at-large A and B shall be $1,000 per month. Discussion?
I just want to make sure we all know this, or make sure we keep expressing it. This has nothing to do with current city council members getting any pay. It can't happen. Right. Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody gets that.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Allison. All right, item D, WSU Property Integrated Planning Grant.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Steve King, Economic Development Director. This first item, there's actually 2 items concerning this planning grant. We received a $200,000 Department of Ecology planning grant to assist with the WSU property that they plan to surplus. They want to surplus about 10 acres to the westerly side of their property at Springwater and Western. And so it's taken a little while to get through the WSU hoops and get all the approvals done. But we have our grant agreement in place, and we have WSU fully on board and excited about this project. In fact, this goes nicely with some of the master planning work that they're working on right now for the site area that they want to keep. And so the integrated planning grant, its primary purpose is to explore environmental contamination, look at the opportunities for redevelopment of the property with the knowledge of what kind of contamination there could be. Given it's an orchard, a former orchard site and former research station, there's a high likelihood of contamination, and so this will ferret that out. And then look at the preferred option is to figure out if there's a way to develop housing on the site that would support the university and Wenatchee Valley College. This was done in the Tri-Cities area with Columbia Basin Community College and WSU Tri-Cities. And so there's a opportunity here to do something pretty good for that facility. And the spinoff is we have some housing that supports economics in our community and the research facility. So Mal Foster Alonji has worked with us before. They did the Hilton site for us. So we had a great working relationship with them. They have a very capable team, and so we selected them off the A&E roster and are recommending authorization to get them under contract and get them going.
And this money, was it directly done through the legislature, or was this something that you got just through a grant?
This is a grant, yeah, Department of Ecology grant that
Okay.
we received, yeah, yeah.
All right, any questions for Steve? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I have one question. I understand what the grant's for. I just want to clarify that this is to look at potential soil contaminations related to something that the city was not involved in. And I just want to be assured that the city does not assume now or in any future any responsibility, should contamination be found, any responsibility or cost, whether that cost is direct or indirect, in cleaning up the contamination. You know, this is property owned by the state of Washington. The city of Wenatchee's never had a hand in applying agricultural chemicals to it. I just want to make sure that we're okay with doing what we're doing, but we're not going to be involved in any cleanup should a problem be found.
Very spot on, Mark. Yeah, absolutely.
And that includes if it is found. That includes the city expending any staff resources to work on cleanup unless there is funding for those staff resources to be devoted to it. You know, we can't be, you know, we just did essentially affecting the budget of additional staff, and Councilmember Poyer pointed out things keep growing. We can't, as I say, keep white knighting things for other people. Washington State University is probably the second largest state agency, and if there's contamination there, they're the ones that are going to be responsible for cleaning it up, and we could be involved, but we need to expect that we're paid for our involvement.
Okay, yeah, and I think we can cross that bridge when we come to it. Obviously, we'll just go through this process, and if it comes back environmental damage, then we'll let WSU, try to figure it out and what to do.
Yeah, yeah. The intent here is to do this. The benefit to the city on this is the planning study part of it,
right,
to try to figure out how to best use that property. We want a four-year university presence in this community, and they're having their biggest challenge is housing to support their research assistants and their postdocs and whatnot. And Wenatchee Valley College is having the same problem. So the community benefit for this is to further having those educational facilities in our community. If there's contamination, yeah, that's on the state.
I don't see anything in the scope of work and all that kind of stuff, but I guess an exit clause about liability. I mean, I think what I understood, right, what Mark was asking was, we don't assume any liability. We don't have any liability there, so.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Look at our city lawyer. You agree with that?
Yeah. All we're doing is doing an investigation. We're not in the chain of creating any sort of a problem.
Okay. All right. That being said, I'd entertain a motion if we had one.
Well, Your Honor, I make a motion for the City Council to authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign a consultant agreement with Mal Foster Alongai, work associated with an integrated planning grant to support redevelopment of property at the WSU Tree Fruit Research Center.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Markart, to authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign a consultants agreement with Mal Foster Alongai for work associated with an integrated planning grant to support redevelopment of the property of the WSU Tree Fruit Research Center. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Second part of this, Stephen?
The second one is just a right of access so that our consultants can do the work. And this went through WSU Real Estate, and Steve Smith had a chance to review, so just a right of access agreement.
I'll make a motion for the city council to authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign a right of access agreement with Washington State University to perform work associated and an integrated planning grant.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Poyer, second by Councilmember Bailey, to authorize the mayor to negotiate and sign a right of access agreement with Washington State University to perform work associated with an integrated planning grant. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Steve. Next item is regarding a purchase and sale agreement regarding the estate of Brant for some property more near our Public Works Service Center.
Okay.
Allison?
In your packet this evening is a negotiated purchase and sale agreement for property immediately adjacent to our Public Services Center. City staff believes it would be a benefit for the city to look at
Any
the...
chance to bring this up on the maps or not? Is it too much to do? It's not a big deal. Staff knows. We got some members of the media in the audience, and I thought if there's a way to bring that up, it would be...
We will try to bring that up.
Okay.
So it would be a purchase and sale agreement of a purchase price of $850,000, of course, contingent on appraisal. So this would start that process of appraisal and environmental analysis. We would have a 150-day feasibility period for a phase one, and a use feasibility analysis. We would need to, in order to look at the purchase of this, understand which of our business units would need access and help to pay for the property. It includes $5,000 of earnest money and a closing date of not later than July 15th. So we believe this is doable. We believe it would be a benefit to the city. And are we going to be able to? Yes, we are. Bring up the map.
Who's running the computer system?
Tammy is.
Oh.
Right here.
And then go all the way to the bottom and turn on the aerial, yeah.
Computers.
There.
Ooh, there you go.
Yep.
Right there.
Move on.
Oh, here we
There
go.
you go.
Bella, here we are.
Now you're getting there. Look at you. Yeah.
There we go.
For the folks in the audience, it's property that fronts Pine Street and goes narrow and deep back to our Public Works Center. So it's right next to our Public Works Service Center.
Zoom out.
Yeah. And so if you went up to the layer map, Tammy, the aerial photo was...
There we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, so it's that middle property you have.
Mhm.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Good job.
Yeah, that middle property.
Thanks for the two.
It's our new equipment, not here with us. Good job, Tammy.
And the agreement is contingent upon us getting an agreement with the property to the north to split it in half, so that we would end up with half property and half of the property in the back, so it's shaped more like our Public Works Service Center lot.
So we can connect our existing
Yes,
land.
yes,
Yeah.
yep. So the fence can come down and we can add another bay if we need to, or two bays, or.
Would you have to take out that one building there on the east boundary of the property?
So it's a mobile home, the back
No,
property is.
on our property, on the lot. that's
No,
in-
you can get
Oh.
right in there. There's
Yeah.
plenty of room right there.
Circulation.
Yep.
Top and bottom.
Okay, any questions for the council? I know we've talked about this a time or two in executive session, so this isn't new to the council members, so I would entertain a motion if we had one.
I'd like to make a motion for the city council to authorize the mayor's signature on the purchase and sale agreement with the estate of Alice Jewel Brand.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Markart, second by Councilmember Poyer to authorize the mayor's signature on the purchase and sale agreement with the estate of Alice Brandt for property adjacent to our Public Works Service Center. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Allison. And our last item is an interlocal agreement between the City of Wenatchee, the PUD, and Washington State Parks for construction of a sewer discharge. Rob, you get to do sewer tonight, huh?
Yep. Good evening. The agreement is just as you read it. So the state park, they have an RV dump out there that pumps waste up to our old station's sewer lift station, the one that we're rebuilding. And the way it was metered was faulty. And so we're working with the PUD and with the state parks to rebuild that in conjunction with our rebuilding of the old station lift station. And so the cost of that is $70,000. It was a bid ad alt on the old station lift station. The cost to put in this meter will be borne by the PUD and the state parks. The PUD is putting in $34,000. State parks is putting in $20,000, and we had $16,000 in our account because they had overpaid last year because the meters were reading incorrectly. So we're just simply managing the project as part of our contract, and we're just seeking approval from the council to do this interlocal agreement and have the mayor sign that. And then it will be, the meter from here on it'll be part of our infrastructure, so we'll maintain it as needed. Any questions?
How long has that been there?
I don't know how long the state park has had the waste dump for the RVs, but I'm assuming it was when the park was built. So those.
I just wonder if it's a lot of maintenance or it happens. It doesn't happen very often.
No.
Columbia Fruits agreed to let us get in there, get to it, because I know it's on their property, isn't it?
No, the meter is actually right down by the ranger station, right there.
Yeah, and we had this is actually a good result because the pump or whatever ran for a long time and it wasn't pumping sewage. It was in the middle of the winter time. We sent them a bill for $16,000. They paid it. We were embarrassed about it. It was like, well, we can't give the money back. Our lawyer gets mad at us. So then we've cut this deal. Well, we'll take the overpayment and we'll go help fix it, but you guys have to pay for the rest of the fixing. And so it actually turned out pretty good. Yeah.
But then it's going to be our cost from now on.
We will maintain it, which we want to maintain these things.
Well, right. And we had been, had there been a problem with the pump, we would have fixed it, the old pump, and we, of course, read that meter. It's just that the technology that was being used previously is old technology, not efficient, and so we'll put in the correct type of meter this time.
Good. All right, if there's not any questions, I would entertain a motion.
Well, Your Honor, I'd move that the City Council approve the interlocal agreement between the City of Wenatchee Public Utility District Number 1 of Chelan County and Washington State Parks Department for the construction of new flow metering assembly as part of the old station lift station project. Boy, that's a tongue twister. City project number 1718, Phase 2, and authorize the mayor to sign the final agreement.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Markart to approve the interlocal agreement between the City of Wenatchee, Chelan County PUD, and State Parks for the construction of a new flow metering assembly as part of the old station lift station project. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
Mayor's report. My new way of doing my mayor's report is I look at my last week's calendar. So we did have a nice local condominium association meeting yesterday. So we meet every 6 months or so to see how the bills are getting paid and sort of what's going on around the building. Seems to be going well. Starting to see all these little scanners and all the security stuff going on. Talked a little bit about doing some pavement work this summer out in the parking lots and spending some money downstairs on all the machinery that's running this place. There's some fancier computer controllers and stuff that we're going to put in. they want to be able to be told via some sort of a phone whether some mechanical thing is going on. And so there's these controllers that will help with that. So I think overall, it's really been a pleasure to work with the folks at Local and Dimitri and the gang. They're just really fun to work with, and we've seen eye to eye on just about everything. So that meeting's gone well. I think so far this is going, and the comments we get from folks that wander through the upstairs are really thrilled with the way this is going. So that was pretty good. On not so good news, I had a PFD board meeting on Tuesday, the board of the Town Toyota Center, and we had 2 people show up out of 7. So I was not particularly happy with that. I am working with that the best that I can. Thanks to council members Bailey and Poyer for attending the school board meeting last Tuesday. We talked about some access across the school district property between what's going to be Maple Street and Springwater, and I think that went well. I think it was well received. So we got the authority to negotiate with Mr. Flonis an agreement to be ultimately approved by this council and that board for some sort of an agreement. I don't know what it's going to look like, whether it's a purchase or whether it's I don't know. We're not quite there yet, but I think that meeting was positive. Still watching things in Olympia. They just started getting going over there. I know there's discussion on transportation budget again, so we're sort of looking at watching that very closely. We've seen some preliminary stuff that's too preliminary to talk about, but there's clearly lots going on over in that neck of the woods. Guys are still working on the infra grant process to get that back. Just seems like lots of stuff sort of going on. Allison, anything to add to the last week and a half or so?
I would say also on the legislative front, there was a hearing this week. AWC invited participation, and so Shiloh Shower actually testified and brought the Our Valley, Our Future housing report. And they were very intrigued and invited her to come back again and meet with the committee chair on Tuesday morning. So she was pretty excited about that progress and some potential over there for some help with housing infrastructure and some of the housing programs that may be able to help us.
Yeah, and Steve and I and Allison toured the new milk plant out in Old Station last Thursday. That place is remarkable. If you ever get a chance to go through one of that, bring your tennis shoes because you'll walk a lot. But what a remarkable facility in terms of the conveyor belts and electronics and all the robots that are moving fruit everywhere. It's really a remarkable piece of work. We did meet with Jeff Lucas last week as well. Jeff is the one that owns the old Cascadian Fruit Shippers building. He's got this desire to want to take the Kashmir Bridge that's getting tore down and move it down next to his building and re-put it back together. I think he wants us to pay for it, which...
like over the railroad track?
Yes, yeah.
Bridge to nowhere, is that?
Up and over and back and down, but by the time you get whatever the access is for the railroad that we need, and then it is actually higher, and then the road, and it's like... So I'm not sure that's really going anywhere, but we did spend some time with Mr. Lucas. And we are going to do some work this year on getting some curb along the remaining part of Worthen Street, sort of in front of his property, and pool to spa to swim to whatever that one is there, and sort of add the curbing to sort of delineate between what's allowed to be parking and what isn't. There's been a bit of a conflict down there with treetop trucks and ibis parking and unloading spas, and so we're gonna, that was part of an agreement we had a long time ago with them. So we're gonna at least get some curb on that street, just to sort of help delineate kind of what's going on. That was all I had for the last 2 weeks of all the appointments that I've sort of had. Alice, anything to add?
Just a reminder that we have Public Works ED on Tuesday morning, and our directors meeting is next Thursday, and those are the key things.
Yeah, so we don't meet for 2 weeks at City Council. They got the 5th Thursday on the 31st, and we won't meet on the 1st Thursday, which means Valentine's Day. So that will be our next meeting, Thursday the 14th. We'll plan on taking your ladies out to, and significant others out on Wednesday night. Sometimes we miss a couple meetings. We have a long one, so.
Yeah, I'll be in Olympia for the action days.
Okay, on the 14th.
On that day, so I'll need like a memo from you, Allison, what I should present.
Okay. Anything from the council members? Jim, Mike?
Well, I'm on the, since you brought up the condo association.
Yes.
Here, I was here one day, and I'm gonna guess the elevators were broken and weren't getting maintained. And
I wasn't quite sure, but there's somebody in a wheelchair coming up and I didn't know the elevators were broken or being maintained. So if they're broken, I get it, but maybe we should have a sign with local telling us that goes say, hey, you know, the elevator's broken. It's cold. It felt bad for this family coming in. So if it was being maintained, we should figure out different hours or post them or something, just in consideration for people who are coming into this building.
Yeah. Steve, I know they were.
They were broken.
Broken, yeah.
They, well, they were trying to do the,
Yeah.
Listen, this thing doesn't go without, so just so you know, Aaron's here. So last Saturday, they were doing some electrical work in this room because I think when they turned off the lights, the computers went off, right? So they were downstairs and they flipped a switch. All of Localtel Sky-Fi was out.
Who's flipping these switches? An electrician?
One of our contractors, yeah. So Sky-Fi, you know, they have Sky-Fi all over the county, and they're shooting these satellites, and it all comes to this building, and so we shut down Localtel Sky-Fi for 1,100 customers for the better part of a day.
Oh, God.
But, so Dimitri's telling me this, and I go, so how did your backups work? He goes, well, you know, we have a backup plan, and this generator's supposed to go off, and this is supposed to shoot a satellite here, and it's supposed to be down for 40 seconds. I go, how'd that work? Because it didn't work. So I said, then we're working with you. We're helping you on your backup plans. We did this intentionally to see how your backup is working. And of course, he's in Mexico, right? And then Steve's tech, and it's like, whatever. So there's a few of those sorts of things that just sort of kind of happen.
No, there's some bugs, but as we find them, we should try to do the best that we can.
So ultimately, those elevators are going to work. So if I come in after hours and I scan, it's only going to let me go to the floors that I'm allowed to go to. And then for council meetings, right, at 5 o'clock, it's only going to let you go to the second floor. So if you're coming here at 5:15 on a Thursday night and you hit 3, you won't be able to go there, right? You hit M, you won't go there, but you can go to 2. So it's actually going to be where it's going to start having the security part sort of taken care of, which probably needs to be, like tonight, for instance. I don't know how we're securing the building when we leave. Janitors going to do it? Okay. So we just, you know, because the building's open right now. There could be someone on the 3rd floor, who knows what. So we're working through
And get to the penthouse.
some of that stuff. But I would say overall, it's been really good. I kind of laugh about shutting off their Sky-Fi.
Oh, you get a bill.
He laughed about it too, for about a minute.
He wasn't laughing about it.
No. I'm sure he wasn't.
About 30 seconds.
Yeah. All right. I guess anybody else have anything for the good of the order?
Invalid selection.
All right. We are adjourned.
Another invalid selection.